and where it would happen. And what was interesting about working with this top tier level of KOLs is that a lot of them were actually the ones developing these tools in their own labs. And so their insights truly did shape how these tools would be implemented in real life. And lastly, we had to define the future treaters. Because there was no treatment, like I mentioned, symptoms were being managed by pretty much everyone and anyone. In every country, Europe, Asia, North America, it was different people doing the same job. And so through our work, we had to clearly define who would be the frontline doctors to detect the disease, who they would refer to, and who would be the ones to diagnose and treat the patients. We also considered the different learning objectives for all these doctors, because each of them would have to be equipped and ready for this new treatment paradigm in a different way. And so to get to this level of thinking, we used a design-centric process and invited our clients and KOLs to be part of it with us. Their inputs drove every iteration of our work, and every detail was validated by the KOLs. Rather than leveraging design as an outcome, we were leveraging design as a process through this. So typical KOL engagements usually include like plenary discussions or a lot of didactic presentations. But our KOLs were gathered around the table, they had rolled up sleeves, and they were excited to build this future together. It was exciting to see how their input came to life in shaping each iteration, and this created a lot of energy and momentum for the future. And what was more amazing was that at the end of this advisory program, all 12 KOLs agreed to co-author the deliverable for publication. And this gave our client a really strong start to lead the market and slowly begin shifting the treatment paradigm. And by giving that KOLs an active role in this project, we were building ownership from the start. And so all this work fed into a launch strategy, and our clients, we're still working with them to support them through that. Now, the second project, we were supporting the clinical program with a short-term strategy to help them make a very near-term decision. And so we were helping our clients navigate a very ambiguous and complex landscape by equipping them with a strong understanding of the science and the data that was out there. And so what we did for this one, we created something called a briefing book as a synthesis of a lot of data. And so this might be more relevant for BMCers, I guess, but it was a synthesis of a lot of data, including things like primary research of 36 therapies that were out on the marketplace already, competitive intelligence for 10 companies. So we chose like the biggest players and did a deep dive competitive analysis on them. It included a lot of market research about this disease area and the leading therapies. It also included a lot of clinical trial data. So we dug into the preclinical stuff and what was in the pipeline for a lot of those companies as well. And we also did interviews with all the cross-functional teams of our client, US, Europe, and Asia, to see the kind of research that was going on in the frontline field and what their views of treatment, future treatment, was. And so this was one of the, not the deliverables, but it was a tool that we used, and the BMCs were obviously very involved in this stage. But the climax of this project was actually using that briefing book as a resource, and we facilitated and designed an interactive workshop, and it brought our entire client team together. It's actually really rare for early pipeline scientists, so people who are doing almost, they're doing lab work trying to find the new molecules that could solve this disease. It's really rare bringing them into a room with franchise business leaders, so people who are trying to decide where the money goes and make the bigger decisions for the franchise. But what we did was we brought them together at a workshop, and using our clear platform of data that we synthesized, we actually explored different scenarios of what the future could look like and all the potential clinical outcomes. And because of this, there was a lot of key strategic decisions that were made in this room. And what I loved about this project, the reason I chose to share it today as well, is that there was a very straightforward impact of what really clear communication and InfoVis could do at an organizational level. So all the images I'm showing are fake because we obviously can't share the strategies of our work, but it looked something like this. Like a lot of the briefing book that I shared had a lot of InfoVis, and we were able to repackage large amounts of clinical data for both the scientists as well as the business leaders for them to understand. But basically, this one shows the different modalities of potential molecules and the treatments that are out there or that will be out there in the next 5 years. And we also have all the different major players that are trying to win a piece of this pie in this market. And so you can see how I mentioned that it was a combination therapy, that we were moving towards combination. And so you can see how we added a strategic layer to this where we actually identified potential partnerships and acquisitions that could happen between companies who are searching for a 100% cure. And our client loved these types of visualizations because we were able to bring such a clear snapshot of what was going on, as well as a strategic perspective to what could potentially happen in the future. And the outcome of this project was really exciting because our client actually decided to make an offer to acquire a biotech company in order to pursue a specific combination therapy that would hopefully disrupt and innovate the treatment paradigm. And this is a great example of how these business decisions are really impacted by science and data if it's understood by the right people at the right time. So to close, I just have 3 takeaways. So when I graduated, so look beyond the BMC industry, there is space to play. So when I graduated, I thought I had to go into production or design, and I know it's changed now because there's a lot more options for us. But back then, I really couldn't see myself fully in those fields, and it was really hard to see my choices beyond that. But what I'm learning is that our skills are so transferable, and I think we as scientists and communicators, we tend to stay away from words like strategy and investments. But if these are the decisions that have the final say in where funding goes or how patient lives are impacted, we need to be working at these levels and be part of those conversations. And it's beyond consulting. Communication problems are everywhere, and I believe any industry that has really complex or technical or ambiguous problems would really benefit from hiring a BMC. Second, I'm learning that our skill set is unique and potentially dangerous. So when I joined Coactuate, I was the first BMCer, and I had a hard time understanding why I was hired. I had way less business experience than the MBAs, way less science experience than the PhDs, and way less design experience than the designers. So I kept thinking, I just had a hard time seeing where I fit in this organization. And I also kept thinking of my skill set at a very tactical level. And what I've learned is that though our secret sauce is our visualizations, our secret sauce is actually the way we think and how we problem solve and the way we process information. We're trained to really quickly become content experts, and we can make large amounts of data digestible. And I think taking content and making a strong position for it, and maybe even a strategic position for it, is a really, really powerful skill. And in the right space with the right client, a very eloquent and scientifically backed up position can really persuade $1 million decision and have huge impacts in the lives of people around the world. And I truly see this every day in the work that we do. And lastly, consulting offers a space and opportunity for BMCs to be stretched, to grow, and to explore. And I'd love for there to be more BMCs in management level consulting. Consulting has taught me to work flexibly and iteratively in a very fast-paced environment. And I believe it's exposed me to a lot of facets of problem solving, and it's stretched my perspective of the world. Working with a certain level of clientele also exposes you to some amazingly smart and passionate people out there. And it's inspiring when you can look up to your own clients. It's also a job where you're not limited to one role, but you can develop a very wide toolkit. And we have a team of 6 BMCers now at Coactuate. Most of them are here today. And each of us are developing our own unique superpowers and portfolios of work. And it's exciting to see how diverse, even within the BMCs, our skill sets are getting. And so that's the end of my talk. Thank you for listening, and I hope this encourages some of you to explore some exciting options out there. Okay. So any questions? Yes.
I'm curious. This is a really awesome presentation. I love the way that you took us through this journey.
Thank you.
Were there any like major changes in the way that you chose to like approach communicating with these different folks after getting to know their world a little bit?
If I've changed, well, so I think often our clients are very different. So I showed that slide with the tactical strategy and the brand strategy. We work with a lot of different clients. So some of our strategy projects are like pricing projects or working with governments to change regulations or policies. So that audience is very, very different than working with like a clinical development strategy. And so, yeah, definitely, like our work is very, and BMCers are on all of these projects. And so there are definitely times when we're forced to take the science and make it very, very business-centric. And we have to kind of, it's always about positioning that same information. We're not changing the information, but it's how we position it. And that's something that I'm learning to do every day. It's very hard when we don't have like the same, we don't speak the same language as those people, but that's part of the challenge, and I think that's why a lot of us like the work that we do. It's not always to a medical audience, but it's always medical driven. And sometimes our strategies are at like, even beyond the brand level, there's like franchise level and there's like corporate level at the way top, right? And we do projects in all of those as well. And so the strategies can become more and more high level, but because we're supporting our client throughout the organization, it's nice because we can see how the more tactical or the medical strategies fit into that as well. And so we always work in many different levels of thinking, and it's always repackaging things. So I don't know if that answered your question, but. Any other questions? Oh, Ryan, I think.
So BMC program is packed with, we only have 2 years to learn not too many things, right? And so I was wondering if you think that there is some sort of way to give students like a taste of something like this, because what you're doing is similar but also very different from what, like you were saying, we think tactically, we don't really think strategically. And I'm assuming that this requires like a big sort of paradigm shift in your thinking.
Yeah, it's a very steep learning curve, and I think I don't think there's any other way to really learn this stuff other than being there. Like even today, I had a hard time because I can't show you the actual projects. I can't talk about what actually happened. So unless you're there on the job and seeing everything going on, like you'll never be able to be exposed to that. But I actually do think that the BMC program, so first of all, there's so much you have to learn in the 2 years, like you just gotta focus on that. Like I didn't think anything beyond like what I was doing at the time, but I actually think, like I said, our skills are so transferable, and you think you're not, what you're learning in school is actually very, very transferable to this industry. So like even the levels of thinking, that's what we do all the time. Like we see things systematically as well as on a micro level, and just like exercising that and visual problem solving, all those, it's gonna transfer very well into, like I said, any industry that has those types of challenges. So yeah, I would just say like do really well in school, and like it is a strategic program because you are learning how to communicate to different audiences here too. But yeah, definitely I just wanted to say that there's a lot more out there that you can apply this skill set to, and it applies really well. Yeah.
It's a silly question, but you talk like a lot of like big picture stuff, but what do you like, what's the day of life for you? What do you expect to do Monday? Like what are you actually doing?
Yes. So I don't know what I'm doing on I actually don't know what I'm doing on Monday. So very practically, you're usually on probably 2 to 3 projects at a time. Some of our strategies could be like a year long. Sometimes it's like the briefing book one I showed you was like 2 or 3 weeks, Cassie. It was very fast. And so you could be doing research. There's a lot of travel required on the job, so we do a lot of face-to-face with clients. And a lot of our global teams are like in Europe or US, so there's a lot of travel involved. And I think it also depends on how you want to be developed. So for me, actually, the past few months, I've been doing a lot of ethnography work. it's something that I wanted to develop, and so they put me on a project that was very patient-facing, doctor-facing. So I got to do a lot of interviews and meet with a lot of the patients to help develop a commercial strategy for how patients would be supported. So it could look very different, but it is very collaborative. I work with the 6 BMCers every day. Like, I see them every day. I talk to them every day. And there's a lot of PowerPoint. We work a lot in PowerPoint, because that's just the world that our clients live in as well. Cool. Thank you.